right, here we go. The Covers Football Contest Countdown Show for NFL Week 12, Thanksgiving Week. LVC, a very happy day early Thanksgiving wish to you as well as everybody watching. How's everything your way?
Oh, busy. I'm looking forward to the rest of the week being a little bit lighter, just having to condense a lot of stuff into Wednesday that we'll be doing later on in the week. So,
was that a cracked beverage? 1
yes,
minute
it's
into
my
the show to get the Thanksgiving celebrations off early?
it's my 0-calorie seltzer water, raspberry flavored.
I never anticipated anybody opening a drink on air, but if there's a week to do it, it's certainly Thanksgiving week. And I hear what you're saying with it being a little bit lighter. You get the 3 games out of the way. The week's kind of already set by the time you get through Thursday, a little bit of a lighter Sunday, and then it's the home stretch run with the extra week at the end of December this year. But looking forward to a busy week of football. We'll get to the Survivor implications and the short week. This is going to be a crazy week for Survivor. We'll touch on all of that at the end, but let's do what we're here to do and predict the top 5 consensus plays for the Circa Million, which is all inclusive. You can still get your bets in for Thanksgiving, but the deadline is this evening at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern time. And we're looking at the potential maybe that we see a Thanksgiving game, but that deadline is going to catch people off guard. A lot of short point spreads, the tightest week we've seen by far of anything. But I think the most interesting game on the board, and where I want to start with you this week, is the Tennessee Titans on the road at the New England Patriots, 2 teams you and I have been back and forth on quite a bit. Is this a game that we can write off right away from where that point spread is, or is this just divisive enough that we actually might find a top 5 early here in the show?
Well, my initial reaction was that I think there's still a hell of a lot of people that believe in this Tennessee and that this line is a little bit high. But as I look around, I suppose it may get a 50-50. It's 6.5 in the contest, right?
Yeah. It's 6.5 in the contest. The market kind of leaning towards 7, but I would be very surprised if we get to a 7 in the market. I think at that point you're going to get a wave of Titans money bringing it back at a minimum. But I felt it was worth bringing up because you and I have had these power rating conversations back and forth. Football Outsiders, a website so many people look at, now has New England at number 2. They were 3rd or 4th a week ago, but now in one of their key metrics, they've moved up. So like the New England hype and validation is very real. And we're starting to see this game was 2.5 on a look ahead. We're out to 6.5 now, 6.5 the contest line. Next week's going to be very interesting with the Buffalo matchup. But I think 50-50 sounds fair. But have you been continuing to upgrade New England as well on your own?
Yeah, they keep getting better and better. How can't you? They're averaging what, 35 to 10 scores over the last 5 or 6 games. So, and Tennessee's having their issues. Obviously New England's hitting a ceiling at this point. They're just doing everything so well. There's going to be the law of diminishing returns. You know what? I just thought Tennessee might get some attention, but it probably is a 50-50 game. I think Tennessee will get more votes than New England, but will it reach 1,000? Maybe not.
Speaking of hitting a ceiling, another team that continuously gets upgraded week after week is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are 3.5-point road favorites at the New York Giants, an NFC East clash. We saw the Giants on Monday Night Football get absolutely bullied by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on both sides of the football. Giants say that's enough from Jason Garrett. Joe Judge able to point the finger at someone else for yet another week in a row, and this time actually get the OC fired. Freddie Kitchens steps in. The Eagles at 3.5 now are on everybody's radar. We talk each week about how there's that one game that stands out beyond all of the rest and is just such a popular side. It makes the contest, while all of the other ones that get selected kind of have that level of handicapping. Surely the Eagles here at 3.5 are that side this week that is just too popular for contest players to ignore.
Yeah and no.
Yes and no. Give me the no, because I don't see it as a no. Tell me the no.
Well, when you have these interdivisional rivalries, anything goes. You've got the home team that got rid of the dead weight offensive coordinator, and Philadelphia is going to be at a disadvantage not knowing what Freddie Kitchen is going to be doing. He's going to be throwing the kitchen sink at him, obviously. So it's possible that the Giants may get a groundswell of support by game day, in my opinion. I'm not sure there are enough Philadelphia believers yet to lay over a field goal. So I know Philadelphia's got a lot of attention so far. So let's just put that in Philadelphia as a consideration at this point.
Okay, and I'm surprised to get that answer from you, because I also think beyond just the mass appeal, if we do the handicap, what you mentioned makes a ton of sense. You get rid of Jason Garrett, you bring in Freddie Kitchens, who we saw come into Cleveland a couple of years ago and just completely flip that offense around when he was brought in as the interim solution. So there's that level certainly playing into this. Within the division, above a field goal, that always gets pricey, especially within the NFC East. But when we talk about like that first level of handicapping, what do the Eagles do well? They run the football better than any other team in the league since the middle of the season when they made that offensive shift. What did the Giants not do well? You look at the numbers, they're bottom 7 or 8 against the run in almost every metric. So I think that level of handicapping might play in, but we'll put it on the maybe. I'm not saying the veto is going to return here, but we'll see if that's the potential. Dead Money Media is already trying to get you a little bit fired up today. 4 games with 3s, too many for a contest. We'll get to the 3s in a second because there's a couple other games that I think stand out that I want to throw at you. The second one would be the Chargers. Well, we're out of 3 already. Okay, so let's get the 3 round out of here. Let's get your gripe of the week. We are seeing this at a 3. It's 2.5 in the market right now. They went to a 3 with the Chargers, so that's what we're sort of reacting to here. Let me have it. Give me the multiple 3s in such a pivotal week. I know you're not happy about this.
Well, I don't think you know what. I obviously am on record as hating solid numbers in these contests. I think it's really unfair. It prohibits line movement potentially. Chicago, Detroit, you really didn't have a choice but to have that 3 at the time the lines came out, so that's forgivable. This line, you probably would have been buried with the Charger money at 2.5 or Charger picks at 2.5. So in one way, this is interesting that it's on the 3. And Tampa Bay, that certainly belongs on the 3.
Now, okay, so my counter to that would be if you do have that buried at 2.5 for the Chargers, let's say, right? So you have the 2.5, everybody's taking the Chargers. Does that not add intrigue to the contest as a whole this late in the season? Like, we're looking at the leaders, 42-13, Jay Jarvis, Price Check, 41-14. Other guys, there's a 3-way tie at 40-14. There's a 39-15-1. So these pushes are now coming into play. If you have that as a game where we talk about each week, that you see it, you don't necessarily want to take the other side, just stay away from it. Looking at how tight this leaderboard is at the top, does having this at 2.5 and maybe that game that causes you to go the other way or avoid it altogether not add a little bit more intrigue to the contest?
Well, I think the people at the very top are going to have to start making some decisions on a regular basis, in my opinion, and pay a hell of a lot more attention to the what they think are going to be consensus games. I mean, I guess everybody really needs to be paying extra attention to it. I just don't like to see these solid numbers because it's at some point it's going to just give a bunch of ties and it just slows the movement.
It's a disgruntled gripe. You can't even come to words with it, and how you're holding back today. I'll give you that.
Yeah, well, I am holding back a little bit, but it doesn't matter, but it matters. That's all I can say. I'm having a hard time articulating.
I can see that. Yeah, you've mustered about 6 words in 30 seconds.
I believe some people do not care enough, and most people care too much, if that makes any sense. And I just hope that everybody just has it in proper perspective based on what they're trying to accomplish. Does that make better sense? You can't. The first and foremost, you got to take care of your picks, and that's a secondary concern.
Jordan Pago chimes in with saying all selections should come with a half point. That's sort of to what you're getting at with trying to avoid the ties. I certainly see the reason for that, and maybe more so around the key number of 3, where we get so many games falling over the course of the season. When we're talking about popularity overall and trying to get the top 5, even with the half point here, Chargers are at 3 against the Broncos, who have shown us nothing for the last couple of weeks. Chargers on Sunday Night Football hang 40-plus points on the Steelers. Everybody saw that offense come back to life. Certainly a top 5 selection, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's probably let's put that on there.
All right, so we've got one, and now we're just dealing with a slew of short prices that I think this is going to be a little bit difficult to navigate. Are we ruling out all 3 Thanksgiving games with the early Wednesday deadline? They may be lopsided. Certainly the Bills at 5.5 stands out, but are enough people, when we're talking about north of 1,000 picks, going to get their selections in by the deadline tonight at 10 a.m. versus their usual deadline of Saturday afternoon, which still applies for the rest of Sunday?
Well, I think the Lions would definitely have been on the list of top 5. The problem is it's a Thursday game. I don't even know whether I'm going to submit picks in tomorrow or on Saturday. So it's kind of hard to read. I suppose if people like 2 games, then I think that they might go with submitting the Thursday games. But if they still only have 1 game, I think that they're going to wait and just use the Saturday slate. What do you think?
Well, that's the bind I'm in, because there are 2 Thanksgiving games that I quite like, but in terms of the other 3, I'm now sort of put on the clock where there's 10 hours to sort of make a move and project what might happen in terms of line movement or any of the quarterback news. And there's certainly a lot of it this week. Like, where am I going to go with the other 3? Because the thing is, it's an all or nothing. You either get all the picks in before Wednesday, or you get them all in before Saturday and you can't use the Thursday games. So it's not like where you can have 2 selections made for Wednesday and get the rest in on Saturday. I think that all or nothing is going to deter any of these games from getting the amount of picks required to get into a top 5 selection. I think that the Lions-Bears game is going to be really one-sided. The Lions picks, like you said, even at 3. But I don't think it's going to be more than 1,000 people submitting and then selecting the Lions.
I don't think it will be enough people to coming in on a Thursday either. I mean, I think that's going to be a heavy game. If that was a Saturday, I think that'd be number 1 this week. I
think so too. So let's leave that on the side, and we're going to move over to Sunday. We have to come up and find the other 5. As Chris was so excited, he popped that drink in the first couple minutes and clearly did something to the Wi-Fi. So we're sitting right now with 2 of the top 5 consensus picks. Philadelphia -3.5, Chargers -3. And now we're dealing with the Sunday games, which a ton of different directions you can go with some of these selections. And I'm looking at it, and I think the one that stands out the most to me is that Texans-Jets game at Texans -2.5. The Jets have a COVID situation at quarterback that they're dealing with. Zach Wilson is coming back. He's going to be the starting QB under center, despite the other 2 quarterbacks not being on the roster for Sunday. That means Josh Johnson is going to be coming in as the backup. Not necessarily sure that that's going to impact things overall, but we've seen the Jets now for a couple of weeks struggle. Their defense looks horrendous, matched up against the Texans, who, say it or not, there's a lot of love for Tyrod Taylor under center with the Houston Texans, especially last week after they beat the Tennessee Titans outright. all season long, we've seen these contrasting results to where one team's off a big win, another team's off a big loss, and the next week that really impacts the sort of overall view of the contest. LVC's back with us. The green screen is looking awfully green. I'm talking about another team in green, the New York Jets. I think they're going to be opposed pretty heavily, and the Houston Texans at 2.5 are going to be a team of intrigue. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they're going to be a consideration. I actually heard everything you said. I was wondering what was happening. I'm having a RAM issue apparently today, so I apologize.
It's too many spreadsheets. You're running too many numbers. You've got the computer. You still use the BlackBerry, so that thing's on its last legs. You got the computer set up. We might have to get you an upgrade. Look at that thing. The physical keyboard is trusted by many. Houston 2.5. It's more than a consideration, is it not?
Well, all right, put it on there.
All right, we're in 3 of the 5. 2 other games I want to throw at you that I think stand out more than the rest as we get into some of these just really short point spreads. The Packers at a pick'em. This number's come down. There's been support for the Rams early in the week. But if we're looking at this and just considering what these two teams have done coming in, I think those 2 primetime games that the Rams lost in just ugly fashion, were destroyed by the Titans, then just got beat up and bullied by the 49ers. To me, that has impacted their rating quite a bit and just impacted the perception that people have on this team significantly from how high they were sort of week 4 or 5 in the season. I think they've come down quite a bit. And there's a lot of belief in the Packers right now. The way that defense is playing, people are giving a lot of credit to. That game against Minnesota, down to the wire, but the offensive output for the Packers was still very good. What are we thinking here? Green Bay as a pick'em, people looking at them at home just have to win against the Rams. Is this a consideration?
Well, let's not forget, too, the Rams lost there in miserable fashion in the playoffs, too. So
a bit of a revenge situation.
Yeah, but they're retooled. I think that this is going to be more 50-50 than we realize. I mean, I think Green Bay will take more, but why don't we leave that off to the side?
Okay, we're putting Green Bay on the side. It leaves us with Baltimore, Cleveland, an interesting number that continues to come down. Sunday Night Football, Ravens at 3.5-point favorite hosting the Browns. Cleveland with injuries both sides of the football. A bit of a mess. Lamar Jackson misses last week. The Ravens are able to sneak out a win against the Bears. How are we looking at this number at 3.5 for the Ravens?
I would we haven't been through all the games, but I like Baltimore more than I like some of these other ones we're considering. I think, Jackson's in, Cleveland's still dinged up and they're fading fast in people's eyes. Baltimore's been no prize either this season, quite frankly. They're playing beneath their standards. But
so
I think
Ravens 3.5. You mentioned a couple other teams. Which ones stand out to you as sort of fringe top 5s?
What do they have?
Minnesota, San Francisco, Indy, Tampa. We haven't talked about Carolina, Miami. We haven't got into Steelers, Cincinnati. An interesting one.
I think Washington is going to make it on there.
Tell me more. I'm intrigued, but are we maybe discounting the people that may just look at Seattle with Russell Wilson under center? I know he struggled, but from a roster comparison standpoint, the Seahawks as dogs, intriguing to some, no?
I think the flack that Carroll has gotten, that he's basically a disaster for the team at this point, unwilling to change, and Wilson doesn't look like he's going to be returning. They keep on emphasizing that they won 12 games last year and he wanted out. They're stuck on 3 at this point. He's got no help. The team's awful. I've been saying it for a month. They're just awful.
You've had them bottom 6 or 7 for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
even before and post injury.
I'm seeing a lot on media everywhere where finally people are getting off the Seattle support bandwagon, and Washington is the number 1 team out of all the teams next to the Patriots as far as a team being on the roll, quite frankly. So I think people have been winning with Washington lately. They're playing a home game. They don't have to give any points. I think Washington will be there.
So you mentioned the article about Russell Wilson and how damning that was. I read a ton of football information every week when I'm betting. You do too. We hear lots of things. We're always in communication. To me, that article that came out that was talking about how Pete Carroll was just blatantly disregarding players' suggestions, the sort of culture that's now brewing within that locker room. I don't want to try pretend like I'm inside of there and understanding what's going on within the team and that environment. But you don't usually, or we haven't to this point, heard a lot of bad things about Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson as like people and teammates and coaches. We've criticized their play calling and how they handle it, but now it seems like that's flipping. That was very unusual for me to read.
Yeah, it was a little bit for me also. And, he's basically getting pushed out the door. Carroll is. And regardless of whether he comes or goes, Wilson's never played for a loser. He's been a winner wherever he's gone. And in his position, he doesn't have to tolerate this crap anymore. He's gone. He has to be gone. He's not going to tolerate this anymore. And I think everybody's realizing that there's nothing left here.
And I think all but 3 or 4 teams in the league would be willing to give up quite a bit just to acquire him. A good friend of the show here, yes, agree with Washington as well. He was also supportive of the Baltimore -3.5 pick in the comments. So right now we're at 5 teams: Philadelphia, LA, Houston, Baltimore, and Washington. We haven't solidified anything yet. Are there any other teams that you're seeing on the board that are sort of fringe top 5 that we might want to discuss? The verbiage that you are providing this show this week is on another level. That's the problem. You do back-to-back shows and you use up everything good on the first one, and then the second one becomes a little bit of a war of attrition to make it through.
Well, there's just so many moving parts at this point because you do have the Thursday games and you have to weigh that in a little bit. You have to pretty much delete the other 2 games besides the Lions. Otherwise, then you got to consider the Lions. I just don't see enough support coming in on either of those sides, though. I think the Lions will be the top selection for Thursday.
That's the only chance. So if we're talking about these games, I think we can do a process of elimination at this point and just finalize these top 5. So we've already gone through and ruled out Tennessee, New England. We think that's a 50-50 game. We have the Houston Texans in. We have the Eagles on the fringe, although I'm very much trying to put them in. Tampa, Indy, it's a 50-50 spot. We haven't touched on Jags, Falcons. Or
what do you think? I think Atlanta might get a bunch of support. I think I like Atlanta better than I like Philadelphia, quite frankly.
I'll disagree with you there, but I will say that the Falcons are a team of intrigue to me, even off of that Thursday night loss. I think people are looking at this game from a just general view or that sort of first level of handicapping and saying the Falcons, as bad as they are a better team than the Jags, so we're getting this one in the pick'em. Is that sort of how you're looking at this too?
Yeah, pretty much.
So I have Atlanta as a pick'em on the fringe here. So that puts us at 6 bets. Carolina, Miami, I don't get the impression that either side is going to be popular enough to get 1,000 picks. No. So we're ruling out that one. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati at 4.5. Is that enough to draw some intrigue off of the Steelers Monday night blow up?
Well, we get the Steelers getting back a bunch of players, and Cincinnati lost a cornerback today. So I just see that as a 50-50 type of deal.
Chargers, Denver, we've already highlighted LA -3. Minnesota, San Francisco, that to me is the definition of a 50-50 game.
Yeah, and as time goes by, the news just keeps getting stranger and stranger. So I think Minnesota would have gotten quite a few votes before the injury and other issues became known in the last 24 hours with the Vikings. So I don't think
So
it's going to flip to the other side.
we'll put that one on the side, and then we're looking at Green Bay, who we've talked about, Baltimore, who we've circled, and Washington as that third team. So right now we're currently sitting with 6 different bets that we think will be in the circa top 5. Philly -3.5, LA -3 flat, Houston -2.5, Baltimore -3.5, Washington -1, and Atlanta pick'em. We have to eliminate one. Which one of those 6 are we going to pop out?
I like Atlanta more than I like Houston.
I would, to me, I'm looking at this. Philadelphia is definitely in. If I have to use my veto, I will use the veto. But I think Philly's in. We both believe that LA at -3 is going to be in. We both believe Baltimore is in. And we both believe Washington is in. So we're down to Houston, Atlanta, and you're liking Atlanta more than Houston.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot, though.
Are people going to want to fade or bet against the Jets more than they want to bet against the Jags? To me, it sounds the same.
It's about the same.
And then, so it probably comes down to both of those games. I think both are definitely popular enough to get 1,000. And then we're looking at what's a more intriguing price to lay: Atlanta at pick'em or Houston at 2.5. It's got to be Atlanta at pick'em, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you put Atlanta in there instead of Houston.
I'm with you. So we got the 5. That was easier than I thought. LA, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Baltimore, and Washington. I feel good about the 5.
Yeah.
Your excitement is on par with the verbiage that you've been using.
I think it's going to be spread out. I don't look at the numbers each week to make a prediction, but I believe that this week is much harder because it's going to be spread out. You only have one team over 7.5 or over 7, and you got people doing desperate things, and you've got the Thursday equation with 3 games. I wouldn't be surprised if a top pick falls under 1,000.
So speaking of uncertainty and things being spread out, when we're moving now into Survivor, this is the week that sort of everybody within the contest has been waiting for, and the week which you have tried to survive up to, because this is when things are going to get really messy. We've got 134 entries remaining. You have to pick one of the Thanksgiving games, and then you have to make a selection on Sunday. When we're looking at the Sunday board first, we'll get that out of the way. If you're able to survive Thursday, we now have the big favorite emerging in the New England Patriots at 6.5. Is that going to be the most selected of the Sunday games? And then we'll deal with the big question here on Thursday and see what we make of that. But is New England the Sunday pick of choice?
Do people have New England left?
It gets very scattered when you're trying to look through and do the math.
Well, what you need going forward is really the remaining selections available at this point, because that's the real issue here. I'm wondering how many people even have New England left.
From a secondary level off of New England, the top choice for Survivor here, would you go to Philly at 3.5? Do you think we would see, or is it just going to be a spot where it's just a handful of people on a short favorite like the 49ers at home or the Ravens at 3.5 above a field goal?
Boy, if you don't have New England, you are up the creek without a paddle this week, aren't you?
You're in a giant, it's a tough spot. But now we'll say New England's the pick of choice. Beyond that, I don't know which direction you're going. If it was me, I would probably go the direction of the Falcons. I think that could be a popular pick. As if you're not having New England, I could see that being a choice. It's messy when you get to Sunday. Like, this is the week everyone had circled as the one that's going to change the way the contest looks.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame there's not more people in it, that it's already been filtered out so much, because this would have been just a marvel to watch this bloodbath of people falling. in a better fashion than losing, when a Buffalo loses outright. I mean, wouldn't you rather go down in a week like this than to lose on your 13-point favorite that you?
No question about it. And the entertainment value of having 1,000+ entries still alive for this week would have just been incredible to watch. So let's tackle Thursday here, the impossible challenge. There's 134 entries remaining. You have to pick a Thanksgiving game. The way that these numbers have moved made it a little more clear today than I think it was back 2 days ago when the week got started and the Bills were a short favorite and we still hadn't seen the Cowboys news come in or that number be adjusted. But let me throw this at you. There's 134 entries remaining. Give me an over-under for users remaining after Thursday.
I'd like to I think the more interesting point is how many of those people are going to have Dallas.
I would say that Dallas is by far and away the most selected team for Thanksgiving because I believe people were saving Dallas up to this point to use them on Thanksgiving.
But what percentage of the people do you guess take Dallas Thursday?
Of the 134 people, I would say the over-under on Dallas is 84.5.
And so you'd put the balance pretty much on Buffalo and Detroit?
I think there's going to be – I don't think anybody's taking Chicago. I think people – and not because of – I mean, I would set the over-under on Chicago at like 10, 8.5. Is that a good number? Because I think people are going to want to go Detroit to be on the dog that may ultimately pull the upset. And I think the chances of people seeing an upset coming from the Saints at this point with all the injuries or seeing an upset from the Raiders is extremely slim.
Well, here's my perspective on a week like this. If you think 84% of the people are going to be on Dallas and you have the potential, do you want to advance with those 112 people? Or do you want to have at least a shot at advancing with those 112 people gone?
I would go the other way. I would want the shot with them gone.
So while superficially you're supposed to go with the Dallas, but your equity, your risk reward equity is so massive in this situation, you really have to consider the other 4 teams or the other 5 teams. I mean, you don't take Vegas. I mean,
you're not taking Vegas.
You have to look at the risk reward. Are you playing to win? Or are you playing to preserve your equity? Which is your equity is 0 at this point still, even though it might be 45,000 or whatever it is. But you have unrealized money. So, and you can't cash it out easily. But you can play games with it by taking a different team and hedging against what may or may not help you or hurt you.
So my over-under for it was 84.5 on Dallas. You're going over or under? That was a good number, I think.
%, right?
I'm saying total entries. So 84.5
of 84%.
137.
Well, that's a little different.
So that works out low 70%.
I think it will be higher.
Okay.
I think people see this is where it gets tricky because 90% of the people left are thinking about the money and it's stressing them out.
Becomes a huge blocker for how you decide.
How do I cash this? Blah, blah, blah. And they go into this mental self-defeatism where they follow the herd. Well, I'm just going to go with the herd. You know, if Dallas goes out, then everybody, I'm out with everybody else and I'm not going to feel as bad. But if I
Exactly.
go with Chicago or Buffalo or some other team, then I'm going to feel like a real jackass, and everybody's going to make fun of me and blah blah blah. You've got all these peer pressures and such that come into play. That's why I recommend never discussing what you're doing in contests, because you're costing yourself the freedom of your own thought at some point, because it's like playing poker on national TV. Do you think, I mean, the vast majority of people play poker differently when they're not on TV than when they're on TV, because they don't want to make an ass out of themselves. So they may make safer moves and may not have the balls to do something. And you've got the same situation here.
So I was two guys high on the remaining for Dallas that I thought were left in the contest. There's 82 left. 82 people still in the contest still have Dallas. So
there's only 82 people that have Dallas.
So I would say the number drops to 80.5, because I am a firm believer that the people that saved Dallas to this point, there were so many other opportunities to use them. They were keeping them for this day specifically, and they're not deviating from that plan.
Yeah, I don't know what, if you have Dallas, I don't know, with that intention, it's pretty hard to leave them on the table.
Oh, you can't do it. And everybody was saving it for this. 29 people have Buffalo remaining. So that takes us to 103. That leaves 31 people potentially who don't have, you don't know how the crossover works, but there may be some that still have Dallas and still have Buffalo, and that number is not reflected. But I think we see at least 80 of those 82 on Dallas.
Yeah,
there's no way people save them to this point and then they're not going to use them today or use them tomorrow for it today when they submit it. They have to continue on with that strategy. And then it gets really messy from beyond there. So that's going to make it awfully interesting. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll get the selections tomorrow morning. We'll have a much better idea. It's going to be a fascinating watch. Before we let everybody go, one last order of business. We're picking the most selected side in Circa Million. Last week I went first. This week it's on you. Which team do you think will be most selected in the Circa Million?
It's 9-6 again. You better
9-6 again. You've got the 3-game lead.
You're gonna have to hit this one. You know what? I'm gonna take one that you weren't gonna take anyway. I'm gonna take Washington.
Hey, you left me Philadelphia. I think this is my easiest win of the season.
You can have them.
I'm more than happy to take Philadelphia Eagles at 3.5 as the most selected pick in Circa Millions. He is LVC. I'm Adam Chernoff. We're doing this for Covers.com. We will be back with you at the regular time next Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, reacting to the Week 13 lines and recapping what's going to be an absolutely fascinating week of contest play in the Circa Millions. Thanks for joining us. Have a very happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next Thursday.